Welcome back to Master 79. In this video we are doing ielts speaking part 1 on the topic of house or apartment. We will brainstorm the topic together, and then I will give you a full band 9 interview answering all 8 questions. These are the 8 questions we are going to answer. They are all typical part 1 questions about where you live. Read them now and notice how ordinary they are. That is the trap. Ordinary questions tempt you into ordinary answers. First, what part 1 actually is. It is an interview lasting roughly 4 to 5 minutes at the start of a speaking test that runs 11 to 14 minutes in total. The examiner asks about familiar, personal topics. It is scored on the same 4 criteria as the whole test. There is no separate, easier standard for part 1. You cannot choose the topic, but you can absolutely choose which details you bring into the answer. Here are the 4 things being marked: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. Keep these in mind because every answer I give you later is designed to show off at least 2 of them at once. Now the single most useful idea in this video, the band 9 answer shape. Answer, extend. Color, answer the actual question in your first sentence. Then extend it with a reason, a contrast or a trade-off, because that is where your grammar range shows up. Then add color, one specific personal detail that nobody else would say, because that is where your vocabulary shows up. 3 rules that go with it. 2 to 4 sentences, then stop. Part 1 is not a monologue. That is part 2. Do not recite memorized paragraphs because a rehearsed answer sounds rehearsed and it costs you marks for fluency. And this one surprises people. Your details do not have to be true. They have to be specific. So let us brainstorm. Before the test, bank 6 concrete details about your home. On the left is my detail bank. Type, who, stand out, childhood, floor, and view. On the right are 6 ways to extend any answer. Add a reason, add a contrast, add a trade-off, add a feeling, add a memory, and never answer and then stop dead. Every one of the 8 answers coming up is built from just these 2 columns. Question 1. What kind of housing do you live in? I live in a fairly modest 2-bedroom flat on the 4th floor of a low-rise block about 15 minutes from the city centre. It's rented rather than owned, which suits me for now because I'm not quite ready to be tied down to a mortgage. The building itself is nothing special architecturally, but it's well maintained and the location is hard to beat. Question 2. Do you live in a house or a flat? A flat, definitely, and it was a conscious trade-off. I gave up floor space and a garden in exchange for being able to walk to work, and honestly I've never regretted it. That said, I do occasionally miss having somewhere outdoors to sit, so I've compensated with an embarrassing number of houseplants on the balcony. Question 3. Do you live alone or with your family? I share it with my partner, so there are just the 2 of us plus a rather opinionated cat. It works well because we've got quite different routines. She's an early riser and I'm not, so we're rarely competing for the bathroom. I lived on my own for a couple of years before that, and while I valued the independence, I think I'm better company for myself when I'm not by myself all the time. Question 4. Could you please describe the place you live in? Of course. It's an open plan layout, so the kitchen, dining area and living room all flow into one another, which makes it feel a lot bigger than the floor plan suggests. There's a long window along the south-facing wall that floods the whole space with light in the afternoon. That was the thing that sold it to us. Beyond that, it's fairly minimal, pale walls, a lot of wood, and just enough clutter to stop it looking like a showroom. Question 5. What did you like most about the house or apartment where you grew up? The garden, without question. It was a slightly wild, overgrown thing at the back of a terraced house, and my parents were relaxed enough to let it stay that way, so it became this whole imaginary landscape for me and my brother. Looking back, what I really valued wasn't the garden itself so much as the freedom of having somewhere outdoors that nobody was supervising. Question 6. Which is your favorite room in your home? It has to be the kitchen, which surprises me a bit because I'm a mediocre cook at best. But it's where everything actually happens. It's where we eat, where we end up talking for an hour after dinner, and where guests inevitably gravitate to instead of the living room. I've come to think a kitchen is less about cooking and more about being the room where people are willing to loiter. Question 7. Is there anything which needs to be improved in your apartment? Quite a lot, if I'm honest. The insulation is poor, so it's freezing in winter and stifling in summer, and the single glazed windows mean you can hear every bus that goes past. If I owned the place, I'd put in double glazing tomorrow, but as a tenant, I'm reluctant to spend money on someone else's property. Storage is the other issue. There's simply nowhere to put anything, so we've become ruthless about throwing things out. Question 8. What can you see when you look out the window of your room? Mostly rooftops, which I've grown surprisingly fond of. There's a jumble of chimneys and satellite dishes in the foreground, and then on a clear day you can just make out the hills on the horizon behind them. There's also a huge plane tree directly opposite, so the view changes completely with the seasons, bare and rather bleak in January, and almost claustrophobically green by June. Here is the full transcript of the first 4 answers, so you can pause and read them side by side. Notice that not one of them begins by repeating the question. And here are the last 4. Look at how often a sentence turns back on itself with a contrast. That said, which surprises me, looking back, those little pivots are what stop an answer sounding flat. Here is your language bank. Vocabulary for describing the property. Language for owning versus renting. Phrases for complaining politely. And the ones that matter most, the phrases that make you sound like a person rather than a textbook. Steal all of them. So why is this a Band 9 performance? Fluency and coherence, because the answers run on naturally with connected reasoning. Lexical resource, because of precise collocation like tied down to a mortgage, single glazed, and well maintained. Grammatical range, because of second conditionals, relative clauses, and past narrative all handled accurately. And pronunciation, which in the real test is judged on your delivery, not your script. One important caveat. This Band 9 assessment reflects an internal quality check against the publicly available ielts band descriptors. It is not a score awarded by a certified ielts examiner. Your turn. Build your own 6-item detail bank for your home. Record yourself answering all 8 questions in under 5 minutes. Check that every answer has an answer, then an extension, then some color, and then delete any sentence that could have been said by anyone. Thanks for watching Bmaster79. Subscribe for more Band 9 walkthroughs, and I will see you in the next one.